Welcome to this program on serpentine leather stamping. What is serpentine stamping, you say? Well, since a serpent is a snake, this method of stamping produces borders that look like a snake crawling. Sometimes this method is called meandering stamping, or in Texas it's called the running W. As you will see, the use of several special tools will produce this style of stamping. To begin, I'd like to do a very simple meandering or serpentine pattern like the one you see here, and we'll do that on a belt. Now, the first thing we have to do is determine the distance that our border should be from here to here. Now, this is about, if I take my ruler, it's about 1/2 inch apart. Now, it's a good idea to do practice runs with your tools to determine these widths. These are the tools, or this is the tool we're going to use. It's a very basic hourglass shape, and as you will see, I've made one impression here. I will make another impression right next to it, as you see here. And now I can use this to determine the width, because we'll have one cut here and one here. So this is right at 1/2 inch apart. So now let's go on to our belt. To lay out our guidelines, we have to determine where the center of this belt will be. Since it's 1.5 inches, right at 3/4 would be the middle of the belt. And since this is going to be 1/2 inch wide for our guidelines, we'll make a mark 1/4 inch each side of the center. Now, I'll take my wing divider and I will set it up right at that mark. I will mark all the way down the length of my belt. I will do the same thing on the other side. Next, I will take my swivel knife and very carefully cut that line. And we'll cut the other side as well. Next, I will determine what I want to do as far as design, and in this case, I think I want to make a double line. And I'll take my wing dividers in and scribe that line, and then I will take my swivel knife and carefully cut those lines as well. Now we will begin our stamping. I'll take my tool and I will sit it right on the cut, as you can see, and make a nice deep impression. Now I will go directly across from it, also in the line, or shall I say in the cut, and also make a very deep impression. Now I'll come back to this side. Notice the distance now between stamping impressions is about equal here and here. Now we will continue doing the same thing, going from side to side. And we will continue down the length of the belt. To kind of blend everything together now, I'm going to take a rather large beveler and very lightly bevel the inside of our line. We don't want to knock it down too hard, because all we're trying to do is blend everything together here. And of course, we will do this on both sides. I've decided to do a border stamp on the outside here, so I am beveling the outside of the two outside lines. Now I'm going to use a small border tool to stamp outside of the outside border. And this is what our finished piece looks like. For our next project, we'll do something that has 4 corners, and so there are a few issues we need to think about as we're doing that that we did not have to worry about with the belt. So first thing I'm going to do is put my outside border on. This is usually something that'll be stitched or laced, so we need to have the outside border determined first. And as usual, we will need to take the tool like we did before and determine the proper width. In this case, it's going to be a little bit less than 1/2 inch. And we'll put our second line in just as we did on the belt. And the next thing we'll do is cut these lines. To do something with 4 corners, we need to first do our stamping in the corner. And to do that, we're going to make an imaginary line from these 2 points, as you can see me doing here. Now, if you want, you can take a ruler or a straight edge and set it right there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this tool, set it in the cut as you see, and we're going to stamp it so that it comes right on that imaginary line. Now, I will do the same thing on the other side here, and we will also go to the imaginary line. As you can see, we get a nice uniform corner. Now we'll do that on all 4 of the corners. Now with the hourglass stamp, we can do the same thing. We line up with our straight edge and make the imaginary line. Stamp it nice and deep. Turn it and come from the other side and do the same thing. And there we have a nice corner stamp. As we get near the other corner, it's time to do a little planning. I'll do some very light marks here, and I'm going to need to crowd these a little bit, but I think it'll come out okay. So we will make our marks, our tool impressions. And it looks like we're going to come out pretty good. So a little bit of planning is what is necessary to make this come out relatively even. And now it's just a matter of beveling lightly, as we did before, on both sides. and then do whatever we want with the balance of this design. And this is what our piece looks like after we have done the four corners. At times we will be doing things like a holster where we have curves to deal with, and also in this case we have a corner. Now one good thing is with the holster the pattern will go over the edge, but in the back of the holster there's normally not any tooling, so we don't have to be concerned about four corners. So depending on how we want to do this, we'll just put a border line on with our wing dividers. Now let's take our swivel knife and cut this. And now we will determine the width that we want to use, and I will use this other holster here as an example. And it's a good idea to have practice pieces around, and you can use your practice piece. Now this time I'm going to do it a little differently. Notice I'm putting one leg of the wing divider in the cut, and depending on how far your lines are in from the edge, this is a very good idea. And now we will cut that with the swivel knife. I'm going to do this a little differently. I've done these before and I've practiced on scrap, so I'll put one impression there. And I'll put another impression on the other side here. Then I'll come over here and do one. And I'll come over here and do one. And it's sort of like our other corner. And now we'll just continue. Going around curves is really no problem as long as you go side to side, as you see me doing here. As you can see, going around these curves is really no problem as long as you just dance from side to side and keep your spacing consistent. Even this sharp one here is not really a problem, as long as we, like I said, keep our spacing and go from side to side. And here is our holster all ready to do the beveling now. And this is how our holster looks after we have added some border stamping around our serpentine.